So let's get started. My name is Vania Freitas. I'm the Institutional Relations Coordinator at the Assembly of European Regions, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to this webinar on national recovery and resilience plans, working together in partnership, together with regions, in partnership with regions. This webinar is jointly organized by the Assembly of European Regions and the government of Catalonia. And the topic couldn't be more important for local and regional authorities at this moment, as the Recovery and Resilience Facility is at the heart of the European Union's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, and is a unique mechanism in its ambitions and also in its scales. So the reforms and investments that are being set out in the national plans will be strategic in delivering on the ambition of the facility, but more importantly in responding to the needs and demands of our citizens and the communities that our regions, cities and municipalities serve. So thank you very much for joining and contributing to this discussion. Maybe a quick word about the program. We will break this webinar into two panels. In the first one, we will focus on the Recovery and Resilience Facility and hear insights on the involvement of local and regional authorities in the preparation of the national plans. While in the second panel, we will hear perspectives on a spatially balanced recovery and its synergies with cohesion policy funds and programs. We will also, as part of the debate, have contributions from the floor, from regional representatives that will share their views and their experiences, on their involvement in the preparation of the national plans. And after that, we will run an open debate and question and answers. So we really encourage you to share your comments and questions to our guest speakers. You can do that by raising your hand, clicking the raise hand button. And when the moderator gives you the floor, we will just unmute your microphone. Or you can use the chat option that is on the right-hand side of your screen. You just type in there your comments, your questions, and I will bring them up at the end during the question and answer. As you might have noticed, we have only two female speakers, but as we appreciate hearing from women as much as we do from men, and we know there are plenty of knowledgeable and qualified women in the audience, we want to encourage you to take the floor, okay? And with that, I turn to our moderator today, is Mr. Albert Castellanos. He is the Secretary General of the Department of Vice Presidency of the Government of Catalonia, and he is also the AER Vice President for Sustainability. So, Mr. Castellanos, the moderation is yours.
Thank you very much, Vania. Dear guests, dear colleagues, good afternoon, and welcome to this webinar that, as Vania said, we titled as National Recovery and Resilience Plans, working together in a renewed partnership with regions. And it's really a pleasure to moderate this webinar on such an important topic for local and regional authorities, but at such an appropriate moment as well, because we are about to arrive to the deadline where the member states have to hand in the national plans, the recovery plans, And I think it's important to focus in one of the topics that is going to condition a lot the economic and social development of the European regions, at least in the following 10 years. I think that most of you probably are already fully aware of the importance of the Recovery and Resilience Facility. Just to mention this in a number that you already know, I'm sure. This 672.5 billion euros available in grants and loans for the following years, which represents 50 times the amount, the total amount of the Marshall plans. It gives us a clue of the importance of this facility and the importance of these national plans for the future development of the European regions. And I think we are also fully aware of the motivations of the resilient and recovery facility, in the sense that we all have clear that we have to take advantage of the economic and social crisis that caused COVID-19 in order to foster, to accelerate the movement towards a more sustainable, a more digital, more resilient economic development pattern in Europe. But probably where we want to focus the webinar, today's webinar, is on the implementation, not in the what is the resilient and recovery facility and why Europe decided to suggest this recovery and resilience facility, but who are going to implement these national recovery and resilience plans. No? And more precisely, from the IR perspective, we think that it's very relevant to know which is going to be the role of the regions in the preparation, in the implementation, and in the monitoring of these recovery and resilience plans. So that's why I think that it's probably one of the hottest topics for the regional development nowadays in Europe. And I would like to thank our distinguished guest speakers for joining us and the regional representatives that accepted our invitation to share their views and experiences and the contribution of local and regional authorities to the preparation and implementation of the national recovery plans. We also want to thank our speakers for the extra effort that we are demanding from them, in the sense that we have six magnificent speakers that I'm sure that are going to address to us very valuable contributions, but we want to last this webinar for not more than 1 hour and a half. So we ask them to be very concise in the answers to the questions that I'm going to address to them. So I know that some answers are difficult to summarize in less than 10 minutes, but I'm sure that you will manage to do it because it's a way to fit this webinar in the agenda that we scheduled for today. So thank you very much for this extra effort to summarize your answers as well. We look forward, as Vania said, to hearing from you, but also from the audience about how can we enhance the cooperation with local and regional authorities for sustainable and inclusive recovery from COVID-19. We want you to fully participate in the debate, so please share your questions, your comments, either asking for the floor at the end of the sessions or through the chat that I think that is already available to address your questions, your written questions. First of all, as Vania said, we are going to focus on what should be the involvement of regional and local authorities in these different stages of the recovery and resilience plans. And to start, we would like to turn to our first speaker, Mr. Johannes Luebking, who is the principal advisor of the Recovery and Resilience Task Force of the European Commission. Thank you very much for being here, Mr. Luebking. And in order to focus a little bit the question I wanted to address to you, I would like to remind some of the part of the speech that Mrs. von der Leyen, the President von der Leyen, addressed in the opening session of the last year's edition of the European Week of Regions and Cities. Mrs. von der Leyen said, regions and cities should be involved in the preparation of national recovery plans from the very outset, and capitals must coordinate with local and regional authorities. In fact, not only Mrs. von der Leyen said that, but the regulation re-established that the Recovery and Resilience Facility should include also in the national plans a summary of the consultation process for the preparation and implementation of the plans, including as well the local and regional authorities. My question is, the task force has been engaging in dialogue with member states and supporting them on the preparation of their plans. So can you please tell us which is the guidance that the Commission is providing to the member states to ensure that the local and regional governments are actually involved in the preparation and the implementation of the national plans?
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the introduction. And it's really a pleasure to be with you today. And I would nevertheless start a bit more generally. And if I could turn to the first slide, please. There you see that the Commission has, let's say, as of last year, very much engaged first on crisis management in 2020, and then from 2021 onwards, really on the recovery. And the messages are the way of working. What the Commission wanted to have as objectives for the member states was first, that member states really have to work together. And that includes, of course, also local and regional authorities. And second, that there has to be European solidarity, because the crisis can only be overcome really by all of us, and especially the member states working together. Then what the Commission has been doing was, of course, first focus on protection of the lives of the citizens, second on the protection of undertakings and jobs of the citizens, and third on protection of member states and member states' finances. And you've seen here all the different elements of these plans coming now to the end. Now we hope to be further on, but we are still, let's say, in the crisis, but nevertheless, we are going to the next steps for the recovery. And then if I could go immediately 2 slides further on. And this is really what the recovery facility is about. It's financial support for the recovery from that crisis. And Mr. Castellanos, you have already said, the volume is really very, very significant. It's 672.5 billion in grants and loans. And grants is really for the first time that this really has been introduced for all of the member states. Therefore, it's not for specific member states, but it's for all interested member states. But of course, the volume is different for the different member states. The overall objective, what we are basing ourselves on, are the national plans. Therefore, the decision which projects, which reforms are being done at a national level, but of course in a European framework. And the European framework is being done by the need to address the so-called country-specific recommendations in the European semester, but also in line with other EU policy objectives, and I'm coming to that soon. Looking a bit at the timeline, what has been done up to now, then it was decided last July by the European Council. Then the preparatory phase started in October, and we have been discussing the different plans by the member states since then. End of December, we had the political agreement on the regulation, and all of that is very, very timely. Also this event here, because not even 2 weeks ago, or roughly 2 weeks ago, we had the entering into force of the regulation after the formal agreement with the Council. Now the regulation provides for the plans to be submitted by 30th of April. And I can tell you, we are working more or less day and night at the moment with the member states in order to get the plans ready so that really this deadline of 30th of April, which is still a flexible deadline, can be met. Thereafter, there are 2 months for the Commission assessment and for the drafting of the staff working document and for the proposal for the Council implementing decision. Then it goes to Council. Council has another month, and then the plans should be authorized. If I may go to the next slide, please. What's the money for? According to the final regulation, we have 6 pillars. What has been maintained is really the strong focus on the green transition and the digital transition. And these are also the policy fields which have a certain expenditure targets. Therefore, 37% of the expenditures has to go to climate protection, 20% has to go to the digital transition, and then also the other pillars have to be addressed. Of course, social and territorial cohesion, economic cohesion, productivity as the traditional objectives of the European semester. It's a health crisis, therefore health, social, institutional resilience. And of course, the instrument is called Next Generation EU. What we want to do is to make the European economies more resilient for the next generation. And this is also really being done by this chapter, which, for example, includes education. If I may directly go then to the consultation process, and I think this is 4 slides further on. Yeah, we are here. And as you already indicated, really the consultation process is obligatory in the regulation. Therefore, what needs to be done is let me start differently. Our partners in the discussion of the plans are, of course, the member states and the governments of the member states. The tool to discuss with the member states, these are the national recovery plans. And therefore, the obligation is framed in such a way that the member states have to lay out in the recovery plans how the consultation process has been done. The consultation process is done within the national framework. Not surprising, because also the plans are being done by the member states. But the regulation prescribes that the consultation should involve local and regional authorities, social partners, society organizations, youth organizations, other stakeholders. And it should not only involve them, and it should be summarized in the plans, but also the impact of the consultation should be described in the plan. Therefore, it goes further than just a mere consultation obligation. That should be done now, therefore for the preparatory work, but also for the implementation afterwards, which will then come once the plans are being authorized. Can I go to the next slide, please? And overall, member states are, and you have been asking me, what is the Commission doing in order to ensure this consultation, or in order to ensure really the proper local authorities and regional authorities are properly heard? And that's, in a way, in a nutshell, the reply to this question. Therefore, member states are invited to publish their recovery and resilience plans. What we have now done, and this is new, and we are still in the process of doing that, we are collecting all the links from the national websites in order to assemble them on the website of the recovery plan, so that everybody can easily also find the national websites and the national consultations. We are going to implement a scoreboard to show the progress of the implementation of the RRP on each of the 6 pillars. And in the end, there is a legal obligation for member states to inform the public about the implementation of the RRP. Going beyond that, the communication is an important and essential element of the RRP and overall of the recovery facility. And therefore, what we have invited the member states to do is to coordinate communication activities also together with the Commission for example, for joint events. And I think with that, and I hope I haven't been too long with that, I would stop. And everything else can be discussed in the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Luebking, for this extra effort I mentioned before, to be very concise. I think you did it. So thank you very much. Now I will turn to the second speaker, which is Mr. Dragoș Pîslaru. Mr. Dragoș Pîslaru is member of the European Parliament and Co-Rapporteur on Recovery and Resilience Facility. Thank you, Mr. Pîslaru, to join this webinar and participate today about the Resilience and Recovery Facility. Mr. Pîslaru, regarding the European Parliament, we read that there's a resolution that made it clear that regional and local authorities play a crucial role in recovery. So they should be involved in the planning and implementation of the facility, including the preparation of the national plans, as well as the management of the projects under the facility. So it's in the regulation of the European Commission, as we mentioned before, and is in a resolution of the European Parliament, also in these terms that I just mentioned. But on the other hand, we are hearing from not only from regional and local authorities, but also from civil society, that this consultation process that Mr. Luebking just mentioned, behind the member state national plans, we can see that are failing to properly engage them, not only regional and local authorities, but also members from the civil society, let's say. So my question would be, how can we use the powers, let's say, and the role in the Recovery and Resilience Facility governance to support the role and the powers of the European Parliament, in order to support the involvement of local and regional authorities, in order to adjust, let's say, this function that we are already observing in many national plans in the preparation process.
Thank you so much, dear Mr. Castellanos, Albert. I see here a lot of good friends. I see the chair of the Committee of Regions, Mr. Michael Murphy. Hello, Michael. I love to hear earlier Johannes Luebking. Hi, Johannes. Very good seeing you, and a lot of friends. And again, I'm thrilled that I can actually be a part of this process. I mean, you know that the European Parliament has actually, championed the consultation with the stakeholders, and we've been quite active. I mean, regardless of the resolution that was like some time ago, we managed actually to act as Team Europe, and together with the Council and the Commission to put it in the resolution, in the regulation. So you have it in the official journal. This is thing. I mean, the resolution is passé right now. We have the regulation, which is, as Johannes actually mentioned, binding, direct effect, direct applicability. Now, I have a nice surprise for you on behalf of my group that you see there, Renew Europe, for the next plenary next week. And I hope that this is not a surprise for Johannes. I mean, we came out with an oral question without a resolution on exactly this topic. So next Thursday, on March the 11th, we will have a Commission statement on the question that we ask about the involvement of, social partners, local and regional authorities in the drafting and implementation of the plans. And that's exactly our role as the Parliament. We've been negotiating, the regulation. We have the regulation right now, and we are going to keep scrutiny on it. And so your answer is responded immediately. Next week on Thursday, I would invite you all to be there when the Commission will actually answer. How exactly is the Commission going to, watch, all the member states respecting that? Now, in addition to that, I would like to share with you a couple of things that informally I can share related to how different member states have done different things. And I think it's a good basis for reflection. There are actually two ways in which regions and local authorities can get, the money from the RRF. The first way is the direct way. That is the national member state would actually, give a part of the budget for direct implementation and management at the regional, local level for the objectives that are linked to development and to reform and investments. And obviously, most of the regional local authorities are asking that. They would like to receive a part of the budget to deliver, their goals. But there's another way, which is equally important, that is the regional and local authorities will actually be the, indirect beneficiaries of national programs and reforms that would actually be implemented locally or regionally. Let me give you an example. If you have a reform linked to education or to health, obviously you need to have, a wider picture for the reform framework at national level, and then you can choose to rehabilitate or to invest in schools, in particular local communities, or at regional level to have a particular view. And there, obviously, based on the principle of subsidiarity, you have a role in coordinating with the national level, how to do that. So basically, the RRF, it's delivering, and the national plans are delivering for the regional local authorities through these two things. And if you add one more, that is that you may have schemes for the private investments or the civil society investments, then you have the overall view of what's happening at regional and local level. So, they break down the effects and the impact. Now, in my view, we should not say that regional and local authorities need to be consulted because there is only in the regulation. That, just to be very clear, in my view, and that's what I'm recommending you to argue further, you need to do that because that's the way to have an efficient and effective, implementation of these kind of programs. I mean, you will not be able to do only things at national level if you are not going to, involve the actors that are there on the ground and they have the best, knowledge. That's actually subsidiarity, that you do the best things where the knowledge is and the stake, the accountability lies as well. Now, just, two more considerations and I will be done. Now, in some of the countries, for the part that can actually be directly implemented by the regional local authorities, there was this idea of creating, regional and local funds. So basically, to create a pool of resources to allow regional and local authorities to deliver on them with, setting a few things that can actually, tick the box for what is actually the RRF, because RRF is not just, an ATM, a cash machine where, take money for different things. You need actually to be sure that you respect the pillars and the reforms and the investments, in the entire framework. So let's say that we can envisage a local development fund where you will fund predominantly, so for instance, projects that are about green and digital, about energy efficiency, about all the projects that can actually be linked with smart cities and smart regions and so on and so forth. And that's actually quite important because you have also the need for complementarity in between the RRF money and the usual cohesion policy money, that's going on as well. So it will be just nice to define a couple of, really big reforms and then to allow the regions and the local authorities to, implement things that are under those particular reforms. And then for the rest of the things that are not, for instance, linked directly to, let's say green and digital, you may use the other type of funding. And also, and that's my last consideration, there should be also a question of maturity of projects. I mean, obviously, all the regional and local authorities will jump right now on the RRF money because it's procedurally easier to get RRF money than the cohesion funds. I mean, those of you that have been involved in usual cohesion funds, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. So, and this is not a criticism to the Commission. There is a lot of gold plating happening at national level, actually, but it's by far easier, or it should be by far easier to use RRF money than cohesion money. But I mean, we shouldn't just jump on the RRF money because it's first available. We should actually try to do the wider and bigger reforms under the RRF with the mature projects, and then with the projects that need a longer period of implementation beyond 2026, we can actually do on cohesion policies up to 2027 plus 3, so 2030. So we have we can expand and extend the financing with the cohesion policy. So that's actually the thing. You may have such thing as, individual projects that are the avant-garde, the flagship projects for the regions or for particular municipalities. And for that, you need to put them in the plan from the outstart, because you need to reserve the money. We can also think about a pool of projects where you can have replicable projects, for instance, related to electric cars, mobility and so on. And then you have a lot of similar projects customized for the local needs. And then you have the third thing that I was referred to, that is the wider, the larger acceptance of the fact that regions and local authorities have a stake in all the other projects that are done actually locally, but thought on or have a framework at national level. So I just wanted to give you a few of the insights of what's actually happening right now in the plans. From the Parliament side, I've given you a concrete example of the scrutiny that we would like to put. Next plenary, we have an example of that. And we will have an institutionalized setup for the scrutiny of the plans and for the, to be sure that the regulation is going to respect it, including in relation to the consultation process, but not only that. We are not allowed to fail on the RRF money. This is a historical exercise of solidarity, and we need to prove the European citizens that this is the response that we need. More Europe and better Europe, and involving everyone. So thank you very much for the invite. I hope that I've actually steered a little bit the debate. I will unfortunately not be able to stay until the end, but I will always be ready to answer to any of your questions and be there to support you from the Parliament side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pîslaru, for your insights and for your quick political response as well in the next plenary. I didn't expect to be that fast. Thank you very much. So our next speaker. Now you can hear me? Yep. Sorry about that. Our next speaker is Mr. Michael Murphy. Mr. Michael Murphy is the chair of the European Committee of the Regions Commission for Economic Policy. Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy, to be here with us. And I think it's a complementary and very interesting perspective, the one that is going to explain Mr. Murphy. We already know that the need for engagement and consultation with the local and regional authorities in the governance of this recovery and resilience facility is also a strong message from the Committee of the Regions. We are aware of that. But on the other hand, what we are also aware is that a targeted consultation conducted by the Committee of the Regions shows that this involvement and this engagement has been rather, this process of elaboration, let's say, of the recovery and resilience plans has been quite a centralized process for the majority of the respondents. So the majority of the respondents reported a limited and a structured engagement, let's say, by the national governments. So my question, maybe we'll go a little bit to the basics. Saying, I mean, from your perspective, from the perspective of the Committee of the Regions, why is so important to have local and regional authorities in the national plans? Maybe it's a very basic question, but we haven't answered yet. So I think it's interesting to have your point of view.
Thank you, Albert. First of all, thank you for today's invitation to take part in this discussion, this very timely discussion, and indeed, thank you for your relevant and interesting question. First of all, let me be very clear. Yes, I do think that failing to involve local and regional authorities fully in national RRF plans can be detrimental, indeed will be detrimental to the recovery. We all want to ensure that the recovery and resilience facility has the maximum impact in order to support the economic recovery. The involvement of our local and regional authorities is crucial, I believe, to ensure a successful implementation of the RRF, and only by creating a deep understanding of the problems on the ground can we ensure this maximum impact. I think we can all agree about the impact of the pandemic insofar as that it has had a strong and varied socio-economic impact on European cities and regions, and even beyond what we traditionally know as the traditional dividing lines, urban-rural, central-peripheral, or indeed cohesion regions. The Committee of the Regions showed this very clearly in the first edition of the local and regional barometer report, which we launched last October. For me and for the Committee of the Regions, recovery measures must take this new reality into account. In the COR opinion on the RRF adopted last October, we emphasise the need to actively involve local and regional authorities in a multi-level governance process to prepare these plans. Unfortunately, in the end, although member states need to report on this involvement, there is no legal obligation for them to set up a structured consultation process. And it seems that even if they are consulted, their impact at times, unfortunately, is very small. Indeed, you mentioned earlier, and just let me again, mention our collaboration with the Council of European Municipalities and Regions. We ran a consultation of national associations of local and regional authorities on their involvement in the elaboration of recovery and resilience plans. We know that involvement of cities and regions within the European semester was bad already, but it seems to be worse within the recovery plans. The consultation process gathered the views of, I think, 25 organizations representing sub-national governments across 19 member states. Those results were presented in a hearing at the end of January, and they are available on the Committee of the Regions website. The responses clearly show that only a minority of member states consulted with local and regional authorities in the preparation of the recovery plans, and even a smaller number actually took on their input. I think the barriers to a successful involvement in the preparation of the plans are multifaceted, but the principal barrier we identified was a simple lack of willingness on behalf of national governments, which did not see the involvement of or recognise the involvement of subnational government representatives. Other obstacles were mainly practical ones, for example, an ineffective format of discussions or sufficient times. It's not difficult to see that the first barrier is probably the most problematic one. If national authorities just neglect involving subnational ones, there is a blatant disregard of recital 34 of the RRF, which states that local and regional authorities should be appropriately consulted and involved with the national legal framework. This unwillingness, this lack of commitment to cooperation may be incomprehensible to many, particularly in times of crisis. Just also, if I may add, and perhaps the second part of your question, Albert, in terms of improvement and how we achieve that, it's certainly not easy. It was difficult in the past with the European semester, and it will remain difficult in the future. Nonetheless, I think we have to persevere. Personally, I think the involvement can be twofold. On the one hand, practical issues must be solved. Barriers like insufficient time or limited contact with the ministry can be fixed more easily, I think, with better planning, better coordination, and also with adaptations to the process and deadlines at EU level. On the other hand, creating a different attitude towards cooperation at the national level will always, unfortunately, be challenging. It is only by repeating how much is at stake and showing that real solutions exist, I think, can we change mindsets. Cities and regions are not alone in sounding the alarm bells. throughout the legislative process. The European Parliament has been a strong ally in this regard. We just heard from Co-Rapporteur Dragoș, and I want to thank him in particular for his continued work in terms of championing the role of cities and regions, and also for working closely with the Committee of the Regions. Dragoș is not alone, of course. A couple of weeks ago, his colleague MEP Marcus Ferber wrote to the Vice President I can never pronounce his name correctly, Dragoș, sending him our consultative results and asking him whether the Commission could urge member states to involve local and regional authorities, and even asking them to reject national recovery plans if this standard wasn't met. To conclude, Albert, I just want to reiterate that it is local and regional authorities who are the ones facing the pandemic on the ground, where the impact is being first felt, but also building the recovery on the ground. They are the only ones to interact so deeply and furthermore daily with all European citizens and understand best the challenges and opportunities at the local level. And for me, for the Committee of the Regions, it's only through that partnership with them that we can assure the success of our joint recovery. Thank you very much for this opportunity and for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michiel. We count on your commitment to guarantee a better engagement, a stronger engagement of the local and regional authorities in this national recovery and resilience plan. Thank you very much. And now, as Vania mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will move towards the second part of this panel. Till now, basically, we focused the debate on the necessary engagement, involvement of the regional local authorities. Now, we want to put some focus as well to the link between the Recovery and Resilience Facility and the cohesion policy. No, I mean, can we find complementarities or synergies between these two tools of economic regional development? And to start this second part of the webinar, more linked to the relation that we can establish between cohesion policy and the RRF. We have the pleasure to have three outstanding speakers as well. First of all, we have Mrs. Rosa D'Amato, who is a member of the European Parliament and the Committee on Regional Development. Rosa D'Amato is involved in following the cohesion policy from a regional perspective, and he has stated many times full support for the involvement of local and regional authorities in the RRF. And actually, we can say that, Mrs. D'Amato, you have been probably one of the strongest voices there in pushing back against what we can say especially blind recovery and resilience facility. I mean, you also defended, you stated that this recovery and resilience facility has to take into account which are the needs of the different European regions. So we cannot implement or design recovery and resilience plans that are blind to this heterogeneous reality we have among the different European regions. So my question, Mrs. D'Amato, is, are you really concerned that this is happening? I mean, we are designing a recovery and resilience plans that are blind to the heterogeneity of the economic and social reality of the different European regions?
Can you hear me? Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for this invitation and for the question. Uh, as it's been said already, these moments of exchange are extremely important for us because we can all have a better picture of the situation on the ground. Indeed, I have been extremely concerned about the results of public surveys showing that regions, cities, municipalities have not been involved enough in the preparation of national recovery plans. That's why a month ago, I organized a working group with the CMR Eurocities at the European Parliament. We wanted to hear from them what was the problem, and as I have understood, there were three possible scenarios. The first one, and also the most worrying, was a complete lack of involvement. In other words, member states did not ask for contributions from the regions and cities. Second one was a very unclear framework put in place by the member states. Regions were asked to contribute, but the meetings organized between national authorities and regions were not very well structured. In the last scenarios, the proposal of the regions or cities were simply rejected or ignored. We, as MEPs of the RIGI committees, are extremely concerned because we believe that the partnership principle must be respected. I believe that it would have been much easier for the member states to involve regions and local actors since the very beginning for several reasons. First, the regions have a better understanding of what is needed. They have concrete proposals to put forward. And I'm convinced that these proposals are the ones that can make a real difference for European recovery. And at Article 15 of the RRF regulation on the content of recovery plans, it is stated that member states must provide a summary of how this proposal have been taken into account. The European Commission will then evaluate this summary, and I wonder what will happen when the competent services will find out that there was no substantial or meaningful involvement. And last, as European Parliament, we can at this stage monitor the situation, raise the public attention, and also ask the task force of the European Commission to do everything is possible. The next plenary, we discuss an oral question, but without a motion for resolution, indeed. The second point is that it is extremely relevant. It will indeed have a negative impact on the synergy between recovery and resilience. It's clear to everybody that the cohesion policy has been the first and the only policy of the EU that react to the crisis. I'm referring to CRE and CRE plus measures agreed with an urgent procedure in April 2020 with the possibility of reprogramming or using the unspent resources of the 2014-2020 regional policy allocations. REACT-EU was a step forward with a top-up of 47 billion and extra flexibility. And then the Just Transition Fund, the European Parliament's baby. We pushed the European Commission to come up with a proposal to ensure a fair transition for EU regions struggling with the path dependency of fossil fuels. We wanted, of course, a reinforced Just Transition Fund of 55 billion rather than 17 billion as agreed by member states. These are our efforts, I would say, contribution of the cohesion policy to face the crisis, but also to strengthen the EU regions and local actors in recovering and becoming more resilient. The discussion on the recovery and resilience facility are deeply intertwined with what we can achieve through cohesion policy. I do not agree with those who see the RRF as a plan on a different track. There must be coherence As green groups, we had several expectations and demands. And I can say that we fought hard to see them reflected in the final text of all these legislative files. I'm referring to the new taxonomy for green investment in RF, as foreseen in Annex 1, that for the first time is the common provision regulation as well. This means that will also apply to EU funds. And then the targets for climate, I refer to 37%, which means 250 billions of RRF regulation on one side, and our efforts in REGI to exclude fossil fuels from JTF and to limit the use of them in the European Regional and Development Fund. Also, the inclusion of do not significant harm principle is important. And last but not least, provisions on how the plans address gender inequalities resulting from the crisis. In other words, and I finish, we approach our work in both cohesion policy regulations and RRF as two sides of the same mission. I want to stress this aspect once more. The use of EU funds, the traditional funds, just transition, and RRF funds cannot contradict each other. These synergies are essential if we want to succeed, and the role of regions in this context is central. So the action of MEPs of European Parliament, in the coming months, in the coming week, we discuss in the plenary. But in the coming months, we can request to REGI committee a public hearing, a joint public hearing with our colleagues from budget, for example. And the other aspect is the scrutiny of the recovery plans. The RRF regulation states that electorally competent committees of the European Parliament might every 2 months invite the Commission to discuss in recovery and resilience dialogues matters that concern the implementation of the facility. We would have hoped for more, but I can assure you that the Parliament is ready to do all it takes within its powers to protect EU citizens' interests. You are sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Amato. Thank you for your commitment and your clarity. First of all, I mean, I think you made very clear that RRF and cohesion policy are different sides of the same policy, and the claim for consistency has been very, very, very clear and very useful to open the debate in the second part of the panel. Our next speaker is Michiel Greibensfen. I hope I pronounce it correctly. I have been practicing. Is member of the European Committee of the Regions and regional minister of the province of Flevoland, and also AR rapporteur on cohesion policy. So basically is leading and coordinating all the debates on cohesion policy in the Assembly of Regions. Thank you very much for being here, Michiel. And basically, in order to address you 2 questions, I would like to start recalling a statement you made about the Recovery and Resilience Facility. And you said that the Recovery and Resilience Facility should be channeled through a bottom-up approach by adding regional allocation criteria and ensuring a stronger involvement of local and regional authorities in the governance of instruments, and in particular, in the preparation of the National Recovery Investment Plan. So my question, or my 2 questions would be, first of all, Mrs. Greibensfen, do you think that the local and regional authorities were given the place they deserve in the Recovery and Resilience Facility, first of all, according to your criteria? And second, how do you think that in the same way that Mrs. D'Amato was mentioning, we could take advantage of the synergies between the facility and the cohesion funds and programs, and how can we maximize these complementarities among these two instruments?
Thank you, Albert. I think you pronounced my name quite well. Thank you for that too. Maybe your practice paid off, but it was good the way you did it. To your questions, first, do I think that the local and regional authorities were given the place they deserve? Well, we've heard previous speakers like Mr. Pîslaru explain the position they have, and I think in theory, it is true that they have a good position, but this begs the question, how will this be enforced? And if the national plans we see just mention that there was an involvement and that's it, will the European Commission accept that? And from my personal experience in the Netherlands, I think we can say that this might not be the case. So I'm really hoping that in the plenary discussion, the European Parliament next week will address this with the European Commission, because I'm really hoping that if the involvement of the regions and cities is not substantial, then the European Commission will do something like reprimand a member state or withhold payments or even refuse a plan at all. So in theory the position is okay, but we really need to see which way it turns out in practice. In the Netherlands, the provinces have made a national recovery plan for their own input. So we have 3 layers of government. This is the second layer between the national government and the municipalities. And the regional economy is the competence of the provinces. So we think we are the best positioned to help recover the regional economies. I think also the regions across Europe are best positioned to help recover the small and medium enterprises. So these are too distant from the national governments to be effective. And I think also from region to region, there are different problems. And the regional authorities can really address these problems the best. So we really need this position. We could have used cohesion policy money. Mr. Pîslaru said the RRF money is easier to get than the cohesion policy money, at least for provinces in the Netherlands. And I think this is a problem that is in more countries the same. This is not true, because we cannot touch the money at all. The money goes through a national plan that the national government is making, and we are not involved in. So this money is out of our control, and cohesion policy money is in the control of the provinces and the regions across Europe. So this actually, it's the moving of the writing the plans from the regional level to the more member state level is maybe a practical decision, but it's not very good for our position, and we cannot really access the money anymore. We really are now dependent on what the national governments are going to do, and they cannot be trusted in all cases, I'd say. I'm not sure how this is across Europe, but well, maybe not to say to call out too many countries, but at least my national government is pretending to have involved the provinces, but we have not spoken with the national government. My civil servants have not spoken with people from the ministry. We're not involved at all. So this is, I think, an important problem to address, and I'm really hoping that the European Parliament will ask for ways to enforce this the position of the regions, because we really need it. And if we look at this possible synergies between the RRF and cohesion policy, we can see that the policy objectives of the cohesion policy, there are 5, of course, as you know, but they're much the same as there are in the RRF. So there's every opportunity to use the cohesion policy money for the same goals as the RRF, or even we could have put the money in cohesion policy without even having an RRF, because the cohesion policy is already there. If we would have made cohesion policy a bit more flexible, we could have had the same effects as with the RRF, only we would have had control as provinces, as regions, as cities across Europe. And of course, this is politically very unattractive. If a minister of my national government would have gone to Brussels to save the economy from the COVID crisis and would have come back and said, well, I didn't do anything really because, the instruments were already there. This is a very unattractive message to convey. So of course they make a new instrument. But with a new instrument comes new bureaucracy, new teething problems, and as we can see, no centralization, which is, I think, very bad for the position of the provinces, the regions and the cities across Europe. So well, I'd like to repeat my call on the European Parliament to really make sure that these the position we get in the RRF is really enforced by the European Commission.
Thank you very much, Michiel, for your contribution from a regional perspective and from your knowledge on the cohesion policy that we know you have. Now, I would like to give the floor to the second representative from a regional government. This is the case, and I'm particularly happy to give the floor to Elisabet Nebreda, who is not only a colleague but a friend as well, and particularly is the Secretary for Foreign Action and EU of the Catalan government. What I would like to ask to Elisabet or to Ms. Nebreda basically is not the same question, but I would like to have her insights from Catalonia about the recovery and resilience plans from the Catalan perspective. If she thinks that is considering really the real regional needs of all the territories, no? And particularly if we are planning the recovery and resilience plans in a way that we have the feeling or we have the chance to introduce which are the particular needs, the particular regional needs in the national plans. Which is our point of view, let's say, no? Because basically I'm a vice president from IR, but also I'm a member of the Catalan government. But I would like Elisabet to explain us which is her opinion. Yep.
Now, thank you. I was trying to unmute myself. First of all, thank you, Albert. Thank you, Mr. Castellanos. It's a pleasure to participate in this webinar and be with all of you today. Well, the way that from Catalonia, from the government of Catalonia, we're approaching this topic is from the premise that in order to achieve long-term objectives, we have to start setting the path in the short term. Having in mind that the accomplishment of the cohesion policy goals in the long run relies not only on a current effective allocation of the next generation EU funds, but also on the capacity to include and address the recovery needs of regions. So very much in line with what the MEP Pîslaru said before. The top 5 cohesion policy objectives for the years 2021-2027, which are Smarter Europe, Greener and Carbon-Free Europe, Connected Europe, Social Europe, and Europe Closer to the Citizens, are very linked, in fact, to the next generation EU goals, which said the 37% of the funds must be committed to green transition and another 20% to digital transition. Hence, all instruments are directed to the same final goals, and that must benefit all regions and set both short and long-term targets in the same path. This means that the resilience and recovery plans cannot subsidize and pay for the same all kind of activities. We all know that changing all habits is a challenge in itself, yes, but business as usual is not an option. We already have a roadmap, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, to help us transform our economies and societies. Green public procurement, incentives for closing the salary gap between men and women, fostering equality through feminist public policies, enhancing Europe's energy sovereignty by replacing our dependency on fossil fuels with renewable sources, promoting circularity in business models. These are all the bases on which we can build a more social, economic, and environmentally sustainable future. And that was precisely what inspired our next generation Catalonia, a plan which we published a month ago and which identifies 27 key projects that, if properly funded, of course, they can truly make a difference. That is the case, for instance, of project number 4, which seeks to invest on the technology development as well as production of vegetal protein or plant-based meat as a means to bring forth an ecological transition of the European food production system. Or another project which intends to foster the electrification of the automotive industry by promoting the production of electric cars and the further development of the technology and industry of electric batteries. Or a third one, for instance, that aims to improve the EU's technological sovereignty by designing and developing of a microchip, processor and accelerator based entirely on European intellectual property. If I mention these 3 examples, it's because I believe that they perfectly illustrate how concrete immediate projects can bring forward the kind of long-term revolutionary change that is needed now. On that note, a key question to address, as Alberto was asking also, is if the RRF is considering the real recovery needs from a territorial perspective. I think that it's our strong belief that national governments should ensure that internal allocations are the result of rational criteria and reflect and respond to the differences among regions. It goes without saying that in this case, one size will not fit all. The allocation system must take into account the regional heterogeneity among member states, the reality and specificities of regions, their economic and social capital, their contribution to production, to the industrial sector, and so on. The REACT has already been distributed based on rather balanced criteria. However, the RRF, which is the largest one, has not been distributed yet. And although there is still a lot of uncertainty about it, it is likely to be centralized. If plans are centralized at national level, then, as it seems it may be the case again, a reinforced dialogue with the regions would be the logical consequence and next step. After all, we are the ones, indeed, with the deepest knowledge and understanding on our recovery needs, as also Mr. Murphy very, very well put. But I'm afraid this conversation has not yet begun. And I think that this is the best moment to stop for a sec and say a word about the Regions for EU Recovery Initiative. This is an initiative that brings together, at the moment, 29 regional governments that share our concern about the effects of the pandemic on our citizens and on our economies. We decided to work together by sharing knowledge and best practices on how to tackle the many sides of this crisis. Now, what we have detected is that although the EU regulation, and we've said that before, my previous colleagues have already said that, but although the EU regulation states that state members must hear all stakeholders on their national plans, including, of course, national and regional local governments, the truth is that we are not being involved at all. This is why, in a joint letter sent to the leaders of the main European institutions, we demanded that, in line with the principle of subsidiarity, regional governments and other stakeholders are actually involved in the EU recovery discussions at the highest level, and that proper mechanisms are established in order to guarantee that regions don't end up being mere observers, but that we are also included in the design and implementation of the RRF and the national plans adopted thereunder. In our case so far, the Spanish government has had little, if any, meaningful interaction with the regions, especially when drafting the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Nevertheless, the national plan is still in evolution, so we expect and hope that there is still room for regions to contribute and make it better and comply with the obligation to consult local and regional authorities during this process. We are worried about the way that the Spanish plan has been done so far, and we are concerned that funds might be allocated once again to the same old projects, high-speed trains, regional airports, or in all infrastructures which will prove unsustainable in the mid and long term. We fear that if that happens, we will have missed the opportunity of building a better and more sustainable future for our citizens and bring forward the kind of long-term revolutionary changes or transformations that I was mentioning before. That is why we would like to ask the Commission, also our colleagues, the MEPs, to keep a close eye on how and on what national projects intend to spend the money, and ensure the right mechanisms are in place to guarantee that the best and most efficient use of these resources. I will stop it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elisabet. Thank you very much, Mrs. Nebreda, for your speech or the point of view of the Catalan government on this regard. Now it's time to open the floor and the debate to the audience. Most of you know, but some of you already use the chat option in order to address the questions to the speakers, I guess, I think, because I couldn't follow the debate, but I saw that some of the speakers managed to answer the questions addressed through the chat. So now it's time to raise your hand if you want to do your, to participate in the debate in the last part of the webinar. But we will also like to give the floor to several regional representatives, apart from the ones from Catalonia and Flevoland, to give their point of view, because I think that I'm sure that they will be very enriching. First of all, I would like to start with one of the signatories of the joint letter of European regions regarding the European Recovery Plan, Mr. Radimir Kasic, who is a prefect of Berezin County. Berezin.
Hello to everybody. Dear Mr. Castellanos, dear colleagues, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to share with you the Croatian perspective on one of the major topics in preparation for the next programming and financial period of the European Union. I'm here on behalf of Berezin County Prefect, Mr. Čačić, whose deputy I am. He wasn't able to join this webinar after all due to his other obligations. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to give you an insight into the Croatian point of view. In surface, Croatia is a rather small country, but despite this fact, there is a relatively quite high number of regions. Namely, there are 21 counties in Croatia. Counties comply with the division on NUTS 3 level. I have to point out that the management of EU funds in Croatia is and has always been highly centralized. The formal procedure of the inclusion of regional levels in the programming of the multi-annual financial framework began in November last year through several amendments. This is a clear sign that the national level started to think about it only later, since at first only national bodies were included. By these amendments, decision makers from regional levels were included in the work of these subcommittees, and until now the work consists mostly on formal procedures. I have to say that our development agencies are also included in the work of the operational bodies, working groups for each of the specific goals of the programming, and each of the working groups so far had only 2 sessions. Regional coordinators are also included in a way that they make comments on the already prepared materials, which are prepared by the competent ministries, depending on the area. However, at the same time, we have been informed by the Prime Minister's Cabinet that the national plans must be compatible with operational programs, which is obviously a huge challenge right now. The allocation from the European Resilience and Recovery Mechanism for Croatia is 6.3 billion euro in grants, which makes 11% of GDP. I think that number speaks for itself. The majority of activities will be aimed more or less in the same areas as in other member states, with one only exception, that in case of Croatia, we will have one more special area, namely for the recovery from the earthquakes, which hit the central parts of Croatia in March and December last year. The demarcation between funds is a responsibility of the state, and there's not much interaction between the state and local authorities. I have to say, in defining the real needs on the field, I can freely be stated that it is a more declarative than inclusive cooperation. The Prime Minister chairs the working group for development of the national plans. Other members are ministers, and the Ministry of Regional Development and EU funds also as an operational body which collects the list of projects from all Croatian regions. And this is basically the approach used for different target groups. We were informed that the first draft of the national plans was made and sent to the European Commission on December the 18th last year. And it must be noted that the stakeholders did not get an insight into this document then or now. All in all, regional and local levels share the position with other 24 signatories from 9 member states, which signed the joint letter that was sent to the presidents of the European Commission, Parliament and the Council, and well as the national levels of each respective country. We detected several problems. One of them is lack of communication between national and regional or local levels, which is a clear breach of the principles of subsidiarity and the multi-level governance policy of the European Union. Second, lack of communication and coordination between ministries, lack of inclusion of regions and other stakeholders in programming, and consultancy at the last moment with a very short deadline to reply in conditions which are often not clearly defined. I must say that over the last 4 years, Varginal County has become a great generator of projects, and we are the county with the highest absorption capacity at the moment in Croatia. We have several capital projects which are almost fully prepared, meaning they will be ready for the first wave of application. If the prepared documentation and contribution to the community would be the criteria for selection of projects, which will be financed from the recovery mechanism, it would definitely give our region a big impetus for further development. But we also do not have anything against if the system is organized in the right and righteous way and with clearly defined criteria and inclusion of all parties in the preparation phase. But we see potential threats from our point of view that it could happen that the national level will wait for those projects which are not well prepared now, which again might lead to delays and might put the implementation of some projects, especially our ones, in danger. So that's from our side.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdan. Now I would like to give the floor as well to Mr. Juan José Martínez Lozano, who is a member of the European Committee of the Regions and Director General for the European Union of the region of Murcia. And he is also he has been also a strong advocate for the engagement of the regional and local authorities in the RRF and in the preparation of the national plan. So the floor is yours, Juan José.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, authorities, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be here this afternoon. I will try to share with all of you my own experience on this important issue. In the region of Murcia, we have designed a regional plan called Next Carb, identifying 4 strategic priorities: inclusive, digital, energy, and green, and 11 pillars, all of them with a specific project proposal. We have developed it through a participatory process inside the regional government and also with all socioeconomic stakeholders. Also, we have recently proposed to Madrid a big strategic project with other Spanish regions, universities, research and innovation centers, and private companies to generate biogas from industrial, agricultural, and livestock waste. At this moment, we don't know how all this will be accepted or not. We consider that regions have not been properly involved in the preparation and design of the Spanish National Recovery and Resilience Plan. Despite the call to national government to work in partnership with the local and regional levels, it has not been the case. However, we are still in time and, of course, willing to contribute and support every effort. The challenge is huge, and it is imperative that we all get involved and contribute as follows to assure that the plans effectively address the challenges identified in the European semester, that we have good projects covering both green and digital transition, and with the above, keeping in mind economic, social, and territorial cohesion. Regions must be key partners in the implementation of reforms and investment, not only with concrete projects, but also to facilitate public-private partnerships on the ground and to ensure complementarity and coherence with regional policy programming 2021-2027. We are ready to engage. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Thank you for your contribution and the point of view of Murcia. We would also like to invite another signatory of this joint letter we mentioned before of the European regions regarding the European recovery plans. That was Lower Austria, and here we have with us Victor Bougon, Director of the Liaison Office of the State Government of Lower Austria to the European Union. I would like to we would like to have his insights. Victor?
Thank you, Albert, and thank you to the Association of European Regions for providing me with the opportunity to present the perspective of an Austrian federal state. As some of you probably know, Austria was off to a rather slow start. We are one of the 8 member states that have not turned in a draft plan yet. So we got off to a slow start only last December with the first consultations with stakeholders, and due to well, let's put it like that, we had to make ourselves heard. We had to make ourselves clearly heard, because the federal government at first was not too keen to power share and to draft the plan together. However, also due to the nation of our constitution, and thanks also to the Recovery and Resilience Plans, Article 15, finally we were invited into a structured dialogue. This structured dialogue has taken place twice already. It is a bit complicated or not always clear whom to talk to best, because it's 2 ministries that are responsible. It is on the one hand the Ministry of Finance for the technical expertise. On the other hand, it's our Chancellery and the Minister for European Union and Constitutional Affairs, Ms. Edstadler. So after this bumpy start, we were able to offer concrete projects to the federal level. And in terms of these projects are being implemented, are being evaluated right now. We estimate that out of these about 120 projects that the 9 federal states have provided, only about 10 will make it to the final draft. And what is a bit special in Austria is the structure, and this is also a bit the let's say the bridge to cohesion policy, because in terms of implementing the recovery and resilience facility, respectively the project, there is something called the Austrian Conference on Spatial Planning. This is a hybrid agency that is co-owned by the federal government and the 9 federal states. And the EUROC, as it is called, the acronym, the Conference on Spatial Planning, they are also the managing authority for the ERDF programs. And this platform, this agency will be the one that will be tasked to implement the projects in the end. So my experience as so far is that we were certainly not in the driver's seat, but we made ourselves heard, and in the end, I think also due to the national constitution, we could not be abided. On a scale from 1 to 10, I would say we have an involvement of 3.54, which is better than nothing. But of course, there's always room for improvement. So here, just a quick overview of the Austrian experience, and I'm happy to engage in further discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Victor, for your insights, and we would also like to give the floor to another signatory region of this joint letter. I would like to give the floor to Anton Nilsson, who is the representative of the government of the Finnish region of Åland to the European Union. Mr. Nilsson.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me. I will try my very best to be brief, as I can tell we're running a little bit behind schedule. But first of all, you may or may not know that the Åland Island is an autonomous region in Finland. And we have a fairly far-reaching autonomy, actually, and it's clearly regulated in our Autonomy Act, which is of a constitutional character in Finland. And in this Autonomy Act, we have a clear division between which competencies we have on national level and which competencies we have on the regional level of Åland. And in several of the areas where money is to be spent under the facility, those areas really fall under the autonomy. And that, in combination with the fact that we have a tradition of managing several of the EU funds, was really the background for negotiations we had between Åland and Finland. And the agreement at the end of the day was that a certain share of national allocations was to be spent on Åland, to be used on Åland. And that Åland would be the ones to come up with the project ourselves. And for us, this is a really natural way to divide the tasks. We know the needs in practice. We know exactly where money can do well, and we know what we need to recover from this crisis. So we're really convinced that this is the best method to share it. And when you hear this, you might think that so far so good. And in our case, it's been fairly satisfactory so far. But if we look a little bit beyond this and at the bigger picture, we see that there are some serious challenges regarding this. The letter from the regions, the joint letter, has been mentioned several times, and I think it's interesting to note that the replies we receive from the institutions, they always kindly underline the role of the region, how important it is. I mean, as the moderator pointed out in the introduction, this is something that even the president of the European Commission is underlining. We hear this all the time, but let's face it, in practice, the situation is rather different. And I think this is something that's important for all policymakers at European level to understand. The whole process of this facility makes it almost impossible for regions to be able to share, to be in there and properly shape the national plans. And it's both from point of view of the setup of the fund, but also due to how the work is being done right now. I mean, we're seeing very tight deadlines. I think it was interesting to hear the gentleman from the European Commission point out that they're working day and night right now. I mean, that really confirms what a hurry they're in this process. We're working really fast right now. Member states are struggling to do this. So just in practice, to consult the regional level is extremely difficult. And also, if you're looking at the focus of the plan and what happens in practice, it's usually really centralized projects. We're talking research and development, energy, employment. We're talking, the big structures. And this might be important, of course, and all well and good for the EU as a whole and for the recovery. But I really think we're missing an important aspect there when we're pushing it away from regions, away from people, and only talking about the bigger picture in practice. And a little word on the fact that we often hear from the EU that it's really important to find coordination and synergies between the different EU funds. And right now we have a huge financial instrument out there that's practically impossible to implement for the regional actors that implement other funds. So how can you then expect to find synergies if some people that implement some funds cannot influence the biggest instrument coming up here? So that's going to be very, very tricky. So I think, to conclude this brief intervention, I can say that the Åland experiences of using this fund is relatively fine so far. We're fairly pleased, and we're seeing the work going forward. But the fact of the matter is that this is really only thanks to our constitutional status. It has nothing to do with the setup of the fund in itself. I mean, if the EU is really serious, if the EU wants to walk the walk and not only talk the talk about the idea that regions should play an active role in this recovery fund, I think it's really important that we change the way we're thinking about this. Because let's face it, when we're asking for national plans, we're getting national plans and nothing else. So I think if we want that, we need to make that really clear already at the EU level. So thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for entering the discussion. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest.
Thank you very much for your considerations, Mr. Nilsson. Very interesting regarding your constitutional status as well. That is not directly related to RRF, but it gives the framework, which is quite positive for the regions in order to identify their priorities. So I would ask to Vania if there's some question in the chat that haven't been answered, or do you think that it's worthwhile to underline?
We have a couple of questions, and I see we have two speakers. I think Vicent Mazon would like to take the floor, and John Moran. I also see you had a reaction, so I think you would also like to take the floor. So my suggestion, as we are running late, perhaps, Albert, we collect these comments, questions, and give the floor to these two participants. And then we okay, perfect. And then we ask the speakers we give the chance to speakers to respond. Okay, perfect. Question. We have a question and comment from Eva Almstrom about the sustainability of the Recovery and Resilience Facility and its alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals. The question is, how does the Recovery and Resilience Facility connect to the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals? Is not targeted to any speakers, so when we wrap up, they can answer, they can react on this. We also have a comment from Ivana Dragic, sorry if I don't if I'm mispronouncing your surname, and the comment notes that there's still time to motivate and to more effectively engage regions and cities in the process of the plans. So perhaps Mr. Luebking can tell us how and what the opportunities are for regions to be engaged and contribute to the design of the plans. There's a question from Diane Whitehouse that Mr. Amato already replied. Diane Whitehouse is also asking if there are any good practices that could be taken on board, as we still have 3 weeks before the 20th of April deadline. And Ms. Rosa D'Amato has a question to Mr. Luebking. He says that we have heard from the Committee of the Regions and also the European Associations of Regions and Cities that there has been no meaningful engagement. So how the European Commission intends to act on this? She's asking if Mr. Luebking believes that at least a written recommendation to member states is needed. So these are the questions I have gathered. So, and then the floor to Vicent Mazon and John Moran.
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, thank you. I want also to express myself on behalf of the Nouvelle-Aquitaine region and also of other French regions that are supporting the initiative launched by the Catalonia. I'm talking about Occitanie, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and Région Sud in France. It's more a testimony of what's the situation in France. So to be able to understand what's happening in France is that there is two specific aspects to take into account. First of all, France presented last September a national recovery plan of 1 billion euros, on which 40 billion should be financed by the European Facility Instrument. So that's already creating some confusion on which source of the fund will be deployed for which project, from the instrument or for the national plan. Secondly, the French region are also managing authorities of the structural funds and had already started in 2019 to elaborate the future structural funds. And now we are struggling to include in last minute change to avoid competition between the funds and the national recovery. Third, this is third point, there is a lack of collaboration in France between the national government and the regional authorities. In fact, we are most of all only informed by the national government on the investment of the national plan. And this situation, these three aspects, is creating a lot of issues, a negative competition between European funds, a risk of overlaps, and also it's producing misunderstandings among potential beneficiaries. And I don't know if maybe it's the same, because I think it's an important point that how the citizens are going to find themselves between the structural funds, between the national recovery, and this is important also for the image of Europe. And so I don't know, the question that we could ask also is the summary of the consultation will that the members have to provide to the European Commission, if it will be a tool sufficient enough to guarantee our involvement. And also, if technically speaking, it will be really part of the evaluation of the national plan. And this is a real concern that we have from the European Commission. And we like, I'm sorry that the MEP have left, but we will be happy. So they will take all necessary measures to oblige the national government in taking further development of regions, specifically in France. That's it. This is my testimony, and thank you for organizing this event.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mazoun. There was another.
Yes, Albert. Mr. John Moran, and we don't have more hands raised, so maybe then we can invite our speakers to respond and wrap up.
Perfect.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. My name is John Moran. I'm here in regards to research, general research pertaining to those areas in Europe and indeed Ireland that would be remote and maybe forgotten about in the overall regional planning. If one is building a house, you start at the foundations. And I think it's important to build a local foundation dealing with those remote areas. They need a support structure, an economic support structure that we don't have in so many areas, right? And there's so much potential out there. And I'm very much afraid that unless something is done in the short term to bring supports and bring tangible measures into those areas, we're going to face a considerable downturn and social problem in the next 10 years. So I'd like to get into a discussion. I'd like the group to see what they can do about putting that very necessary foundation into place to support the smaller communities. We're not talking about a lot of expense. We're talking about putting a development channel into those areas to support and explore the potential. So that's essentially my position on this. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Moran. Thank you for your remarks. And now is the time, as Vanya said, if you feel so, for the speakers to make your final remarks, 1 minute final remarks, if you feel so. And in order to close the webinar, because we are a little bit late already, but if you want to start in the same order we start the panel, Mr. Luebking. I don't know whether he's here or he already left. Or Mr. Pîslaru already left. He said that he couldn't stay more time with us. Mr. Rijsberman as well. Well, I don't know if some of the speakers is still here and wants to make a final remark. He's more than welcome. Mr. Murphy.
Yeah, just very briefly, again, to drive home the point, you know, the crucial involvement, the crucial need for the involvement of local and regional authorities to ensure a successful recovery. And again, just to make a point, and I did put it up on the chat function, that the Committee of the Regions has launched a study to assess the national plans from the perspective of local and regional government, from a cohesion perspective, from the digital and green transition perspective, and we hope to present those results. And I should have mentioned, because there was a question about SDGs as well, but we hope to present those results at a high level event towards the end of this year. But from the perspective of the Committee of the Regions, from my perspective as chair of the Econ Commission, it's crucial to insist, to continue to insist, we have to persevere on the need to put cities and regions at the heart of the EU recovery. So important, as well, as John Moran pointed out, that we reach those rural and peripheral regions, you know, with instruments, you know, with precision, so that we can begin the recovery. Thank you for the opportunity, and just to say well done to all involved.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. Ms. Nebreda, I think she already wanted to make her final remarks. Mr.
Okay.
Nebreda?
Yes. No. I don't know why there's a problem with the mute button, but yes, thank you. I would like to go briefly for the question with regards the SDGs, because I already touched upon it very briefly in my intervention. But just to add again that the SDGs, they are the roadmap that can help us transform our economies and our societies. The top 5 cohesion policy objectives for this year's 2021-2027 are very linked to the next generation EU goals. So in the end, all instruments are directed to the same final goals, and they set all the short and long-term targets in the same path. So in a way, let's sum it up as saying that the cohesion policy or the next generation EU goals are the way to implement the SDGs that are the broader roadmap. This is my take on it. And I think that everything else has already been said. So I would just like to take this opportunity to thank again Albert and AER, for having organized this debate on something so important as how the regions can be part of the decision making around the recovery funds. Because as we all said, despite the passion with which member states defend the subsidiarity principle to push the EU institutions away, for instance, when these try to take forward the agenda on cohesion, within their borders, that passion cools off, and they have a tendency to forget that very simple yet powerful idea that decisions must be taken as close as possible to citizens. I don't know, history shows us that in moments of such shared and extreme hardship, the world can come together in a spirit of solidarity to lay the foundations for a better future. So we are currently facing 2 massive tasks: one, to fight the crisis today, and the other, to build a better tomorrow. So we have an historical chance to do it. Let's seize this opportunity, and we regions, we are ready to do our bit. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Nebreda. I think we couldn't end better than that. But if there's any other speaker who wants to add another final remark, but I'm afraid most of them already left because I had other commitments this afternoon. Thank you very much to all the speakers for your participations, and to the other regions that told their testimony and their point of view regarding the role that the regions have to play in this recovery and resilience plans that for sure are going to shape our economy, our society in the following years. And I think I see this webinar, this today's webinar, as a starting point of a task that we have to do. We have to persevere, as Mr. Murphy said, in the role that the regions want to play. I mean, nobody is going to give us a role without, I mean, our perseverance demanding this role. What is clear is what Ms. Nebreda said, that as closer we are from the needs of the citizens, more efficient will be using these funds. But today, I think we raised some warning flags regarding the involvement of the regional and local authorities. And these rising flags have to be useful as an incentive, as a motivation to make our voice stronger and stronger in the different forums where we can express it, either the European Parliament, the Committee of the Regions, the Assembly of Regions, of course, and in other forums where these recovery and resilience plans are going to be designed somehow. I mean, we are in the third month of the first year of the implementation of this recovery and resilience plans. We have time still, but what we saw clearly this afternoon is that we have a lot of work to do. So we invite all the regions that wanted to do this work together with the Assembly of European Regions to raise our voice together and do it, I mean, cooperatively. And basically, this is one of the things that we do in the Assembly of European Regions. So we'll be happy to contribute to a more regional approach, a closer approach of these recovery and resilience plans. So thank you very much to the IAR Secretariat as well to make possible this webinar today. Thanks to Vania particularly for all the work done, not only this afternoon, but all the days before to properly prepare this debate. And thanks to all of you to be here. And as I said, this webinar is not only a debate, or I mean, it's not only a space to share our experience or worries, but it's a starting point to make our demands stronger in front of the European Commission and the European Parliament. Thank you very much. I think we can leave it here and see you in the next debate probably, and we hope that soon we'll do debates not only in virtual format but presentially as well. Thank you very much.